Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another interview. Hope you're enjoying the event so far. We do have a bunch of announcements that are coming before the end, so please stick around for that. My name is Nigel. I'm the co-founder of mayamada and organizer of this GamePad Online event. And over the day, we've been speaking to individuals, professionals from the video games industry, just to give you an insight into their journey, the work they've done for those that are interested in sort of being part of the video games industry or just curious about how these games are made and the types of people that make them. So I am now speaking to Des Gayle, who is the founder of the independent video game studio Alter Gene. Des, welcome to the show, to the event.
Hello, good. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Just to make sure people are reminded that, as always, you can comment in the Twitch stream, in the live stream, in Discord as well. We have a Discord community. If you have not checked that out yet, please do. You can also send your feedback to us on social media. We are at mayamada on Twitter and at mayamadatees on Instagram. So yeah, we're going to get straight into the interview. And I gave Des like a little intro. Let me give you the full, well, not even the full thing. Let me say some other stuff about Des. So you've been, so you've got experience publishing in the publishing and development side of video games for over 20 years, which is that's a big number. You've worked with some big names like Microsoft, Square Enix, EA, Crytek, also, and you are the board member of Ukie, so the UK Trade Association for Video Games, a chair of GamesAid, ambassador for SpecialEffect. What else have I got here? You have been elected to the BAFTA Games Committee, and you are also one of the founders of POC In, advocating for diversity in video games. Did I catch everything?
I think so. That sounds okay. Like a lot when you say it like that.
It does. It sounds, so that's actually my first thing, because I've got a bit of a bone to pick with you. And it's pretty much like you do too much stuff. So when I do these interviews, I have to get all these notes together, and each one of those things that you do could be its own interview. So the problem that I've got is I need to like sort stuff out and figure out what am I going to ask you, because, you know, I don't have infinite time. So that's my issue. That's my issue with you. But I was also thinking and wondering, like, seeing a list of things, there's always this idea of knowing when to say no. And like, there's a saying.
Yeah.
So obviously you've never heard the saying before, I can tell because of all the stuff you're doing. But how do you balance like all these projects, all these different projects that you do?
Yeah, it's sheer force of will. I don't get as much sleep as I should.
I can imagine.
But I'm very lucky to have a very understanding wife who lets me work quite a lot, like during the week. Weekends is definitely for family time. But it's just a lot of context switching, really. So obviously, you know, most of these are volunteer positions, and they're not full-time roles. So and we're really quite organised. So when we do board meetings, like we get the board notes like a week in advance, so we've got enough time to read them and digest them, so that we're not. So it makes the meetings very efficient.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I mean, you're right. Like I did have a really, really bad problem with saying no to things, but all of that was superseded by my desire to help as many people as possible, whether that's just like get into the games industry, understand the games industry, or if you're already here, like just make cool games. Yeah, I just love helping people like that. And I think all those things are, I believe in them. You know, I fully believe what SpecialEffect are doing. I love what we're doing with GamesAid. You know, Ukie, it's been a great learning experience for me because, you know, I was a member for a couple of years beforehand, before winning the board seat. But you just don't realise the depth that they go to make the industry a better place. There's loads of stuff they speak to the government about that we directly benefit from, that you're just like, oh, this is a nice thing that's just arrived magically. And then BAFTA as well. Like, I think one thing that's great about video games has just been the meteoric rise, just of, cultural significance and, I guess revenue, right? Contribution to the economy.
Yeah.
And BAFTA, they're bringing us into that TV and film, because we're all creators. So it makes sense for us to be part of that.
Okay. No, that's really cool. And it's good that you are involved in, all these different activities that sort of further the cause, of games as an industry, as a culture. So going back, like I said, sort of 20 years in this, like, how did you arrive, into the industry? Because I feel like now there are there are clearer paths, like through education into the games industry. I imagine that wasn't the case when you started. So what was the thing that got you started, and how did you find that path into the industry?
So this is going to upset quite a few people, but I just got super lucky.
Everyone says that. I don't believe that, but go on. I'm going to let you continue before I disagree with you.
Seriously. Seriously. So I'll go all the way back. So, back when I was at school, like, I was always into, like, technology, computers and stuff. And, whilst we, as a family, didn't have a lot of money to indulge that, I had a friend that did. And, so I used to go around his house and build computers with him. Fast forward a couple of years, when in my teenage years, I got a part-time job at McDonald's. His older sister was working there, and then her husband was working for Lego Media at the time.
Okay.
And he was just like, "Oh, do you know anyone smart who wants to test video games?" And it was just like, she was immediately like, "Oh, well, Des," I mean, he can spell his name, that's how you can do that. But just from, like, osmosis, like, she knew I was in the garage with her little brother building PCs and stuff. So, oh, that sounds relatively cool. And then, it was awesome. I went for an interview, and then you got that, like, pseudo nepotism, because he knew me through his wife. But I also obviously did good in the interview as well. So, but I had the job the next day and started the following week. So,
okay.
Just
like, that is kind of lucky.
Into it that way.
Yeah, that is kind of lucky.
And because also back then, like, legitimately, I thought all video games were made in Japan, and they just came over to us on a boat or a plane and we could buy them for 60 quid. But I had no idea that there's a video game company like 3 or 4 miles down the road from my house. Insane. Like, I'm super envious of everyone, like, today, or even, if you go back 10 years ago, just the access that people have got to, like, where games are being made and how they're being made.
Interesting. So the thing I will disagree on the lucky thing is, like, I always find, because you were in the right place at the right time and you knew the right people, but then you had that interest and you kind of pursued it. So if you weren't working on building computers and having that interest, then so you were known for that. So I always feel like there's something that you did or that people do that then gets you recognized. If you hadn't have done, like, if you hadn't have been as interested and pursued it as much as you did, it wouldn't have been in that person's mind to say, "Oh, you're the guy for computer stuff."
That's fair. And I'll add a little bit more to that, actually. So, so fast forward 3 months into the job, and, like, it really wasn't for me. Like, QA testing, you need to be wired a certain way and, quite methodical when you're thinking, and the tasks are quite repetitive.
Yeah.
And I can't remember that far back, but I just went to my boss and said, I'm not sure this is working out. I'm not really feeling this. But this is the luck thing again. He was just like, "Oh, I've just had a meeting with this company about some encryption stuff. Like, do you want to try and have a go at that?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool." And then that kept me there for another 2 years. So,
Okay, I'll admit there is some luck. You seem to have these occurrences of just, like, getting pointed to these roles. So I'll give you a bit of that luck. So then how do you go from, as you started in QA testing, to working with, like, these big names that I mentioned, like Crytek, EA, Microsoft? Where do you make that jump?
So So again, like this was like just grit. So after what I end up after, so yeah, as he ended up getting made redundant from Lego Media, the problem. So Lego, they're a great company, but they're just ahead of the game. So like obviously they're a traditional physical toy company, and they knew they had to get into this tech space, but there's like core fundamental values that they just weren't prepared to sacrifice to get there. And it's nothing horrible. It's just so animation, right? So the minifigs, they can only move a certain way. And us being a software company, we're like, well, this is where the market's going. They're expecting more realistic animations. And we've got a lot of resistance to that. And by that point, other companies had starting the fidelity of animations would get higher because this was going through PS1, into PS2 era. So yeah, and the effect of that is obviously financial, right? Not many people buy the games because they look low fidelity, blah, blah, blah. So that was that. I ended up working for Xbox for a bit. I helped to launch the original Xbox. That was awesome. But then, again, just through, I guess, being quite personable and always want to do my best, the company that sold the encryption software to Lego, like, recommended me to another one of their clients.
Oh, wow.
So they came after me. They were like, "Oh, hey, what are you up to?" I was like, "Oh, I've got a job at Microsoft Source." They're like, "Yeah, do you want to come work for us?" It's just the recruiter. And I was like, "Well, I don't know, what's the job?" And then they started listing off the games, and I was like, "Holy smokes!" It was EA, and at that point in my life, I was definitely a fanboy. Like, I played FIFA, I played Madden, I played NHL, and I was like, "Oh wow, can I get to work with these games?" So I was in there like a shot, and obviously the reality is you don't get to work in those games. Like, EA's a massive company, and they weren't even made in England; they were made in Canada. So it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is all cool, but you're over here doing this. It's like, oh, okay. Which was fantastic. And like, EA, I overall had a great 5 years there. It had a really good work hard, play hard ethic, which at that point in my life and that age was fine. I couldn't really imagine doing that now. They do make you earn your money. But yeah, and then after that, I guess what's useful for everyone watching is, so once you're in the ecosystem, it's all about relationships. So, I always would go above and beyond to make sure I did a good job for people. And the games industry is still small, so when all these people move around, they remember like good experiences and good work from people. So even though I haven't directly worked for anyone yet, I have had like second hand contact with everybody. So right. It's been great. Like, oh, you should speak to this person about this job. Like, all right, fair enough. And then on top of that, it's just about being flexible. So I was in my mid-20s, and I didn't have a mortgage or anything, so I could move around, which back then was pretty good for the industry because it was quite unstable. So so after EA, I ended up working for a company in Oxford, which was hilarious because I didn't know this before I got there, but they actually made games for EA. So it was like, So
you tried to get away.
Week I'd left, I'd left EA. I was like, okay, see ya, bye. And then the following week, they get emails from me like, oh, hey, buddy. And it's like, Des? I'm like, yeah, it's me. They're like, wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
But then, so another redundancy from there led me to go work in Barcelona for a bit. And then unfortunately, had some family issues, so I had to come home. And then I worked for a company on the south coast called Climax, for a client who were Square Enix. So, we're working on a game. The game didn't quite hit the metrics they wanted, so Square Enix canned it. So I was like, okay, cool. So this was redundancy number 3. And I was like, oh, okay. And at this point, I was just like, maybe maybe video games isn't for me.
Oh, really?
And,
had that
sorry?
moment. You had that moment of
I was just like 3 times. Just like I'm getting older now. Like I'm in my 30s now, so like I need some stability. But a friend of mine, a former recruiter, was just like, "Hey, I've got this job in Germany. I think you're going to be great at it." And it was for Crytek, and so I played Crysis a couple of times. I was impressed with their tech. Like, I wasn't really a fan of the game, but like I definitely want to be involved with that. And then that's when I kind of started learning like the engine side of the games business.
Okay.
Because they make their own CryEngine. But again, so I was there 6 months, and they decided to consolidate my department with another department. And the German employment law is quite strict. So if you're there like 6 months and 1 day, like it's almost impossible to get rid of someone. So 5 months and 29 days later, they're like, yeah, you're quite expensive, and this other team already has a project manager. We don't need 2, so off you go.
I mean, to get done quick before you reach 6 months or 1 day. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it was. Hey, listen, like it's business. I get it. They could have been nicer about it, but I understood. And then we kind of come back to England. I'm like, all right, what am I going to do now? And then Square Enix get in touch. And I was like, okay, great. That sounds awesome. I need a job. I need money. Off I go. And then when I went to the interview, I was interviewed by the same 2 people that had killed the previous project I was on.
Wow.
So it was just like, oh, hey guys, like this has been a really bad year for me. Like, and it's all your fault. But
this is
but no, like
you've got a story. It's like some Hollywood. I'm thinking, you know what it reminds me of? Like some you know, Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith.
Yeah,
where you've got like the video game version of that, just like hit after hit, and then you finally turn around. That is mad. So then
it was
because what I'm getting, like, there's a couple of things I'm getting, like resilience is one, the resilience like to keep going, but then also I think you touched on it, sort of the interpersonal skills, and I find like you need that mix. So obviously there's technical things you need to know to work in the video games industry, depending on what area. But like, how important for you are the skills that you would have learned through formal education let me not frame it like that, but in addition to the sort of soft skills, I'll say, that you might have picked up along the way, like how do you find that balance as along your journey?
So, I think, so when I was doing a BTEC in computer studies, we had to do a lot of group work. And I think it's the skills I picked up with the group work, like learning to speak to different types of people who like need information related to them in a different way.
Yeah.
So back at that point, I would have been, I was one of the technical people. I did the programming and stuff, and then we had to market this project. There's someone who did that. Someone was doing project management, which is hilarious now that I do it, and someone was the designer. So just being able to say to the designer, like, oh, that's a great idea, but I can't do that, or the framework or system won't allow me to do that. We need to come up with a way to get what you want, but like how it's possible to be built. It would make no sense if I said to her, technical term, I can't do it. Like, that helps no one. So it just meant I, had to do that mental agility.
Yeah, to reframe it.
To be inclusive. Yeah. And that goes to the rest of the team as well. So, that was very important. And I guess if we're a technical, my time at McDonald's, when I did the management training there, like, that training was phenomenal. Like, that was 20 years ago for me. And I still use tools today that I learned back then. I don't know, it sounds weird, but
yeah, I was not expecting
like the outward perception of that is, sorry?
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously. No, And just to diverse quickly, like, when you think about it, it makes sense, right? They're a global corporation. They've created simple processes that can be repeated.
Yes, yeah.
Therefore, like, you need process behind that and structure behind that. And again, like, when I went on my first day of training, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I was just shoveling fries and flipping burgers, and obviously there's a little bit of science involved, but beyond that, like, it's amazing. And that's even before you get into like global supply chain stuff. Like, it's just incredible. Yes, sorry. But yeah, and I think kind of what you're getting at is if I talk about like STEM subjects, like art, I can't draw. I never could draw, so that just kind of went out the window. I was good at the kind of like the biosciences, physics, not so much. And I was really good at maths up until A level. A level was fine, yeah. But because I didn't really need to do specific tasks around those in my jobs, they sort of like started to fade away quite quickly.
Yeah.
But I think with the background in maths and kind of like the science with the analytical thinking, that helped me when I moved on to do like the encryption work. But at the end of the day, like, it's a tool, right? And tools can be learned. And if they can't, they're a bad tool.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, that's cool. So through all that, you then have got to the point where you founded your own studio. So we're gonna get into that after the break. Welcome back. I'm here again with Des Gayle, who does a bunch of stuff in the video games industry. I'm not going to list it all because we don't have time for that. You need to skip to the beginning of the video to see that list. So we're going to continue. So we've been talking about Des's journey through the games industry, and sort of we're at the point where you founded your own studio, Alter Gene. So why did you take that step? Because that's a lot different than working for sort of a bigger organization, going to create your own. And as someone who's sort of working on creating their own sort of thing, it's a lot of work. So why did you do it? What are you thinking?
Yeah, 100%. I'll tell you what, if I go back in time, I'd probably have a hard conversation with myself. No, so there's a couple of things. So after, I think it was redundancy 3, I'd kind of been around 14-ish years at that point. So I had amassed quite a bit of experience. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I know what's going on. And there are opportunities coming where people wanted that experience. So I was like, all right. So initially it was just a bucket to do some consulting work on the side.
Okay.
Not mess up my tax situation. So even when I was working at Square, like, that was through the company. I was essentially consulting to them. But as you do that more and more, and the market changes, you get more opportunities. So, oh, hey, you have video games. Like, yeah, can you make an app? I was just like, right, okay. That depends what type of app. Like a game app.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to do something about fashion. Like, okay, cool. Probably, but that's not really, like, you could find better people for that. I did actually step out into startup land for about 6 months. We tried to make an Android phone for emerging markets. It was going really well until a company called Nokia turned up, and then everyone stopped talking to us.
Right.
But it was also the worst 6 months of my life. I was great to come back to video games. And then, things just came up after that. Like, there was opportunity after opportunity, just small ones, nothing major. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, there's a market there. I know there is. And then I started to speak to people in combination of the work I was doing, and creatively, I wasn't being super satisfied. I worked on one awesome title, Life is Strange. And I wanted to work on more of those. Yeah. Because
that's an interesting game. It's very, like, different than your, I'd say, typical sort of average mainstream game.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's not what the company wanted. They wanted me to work on more mainstream games. So I was like, okay, well, I can maybe have a go at doing this myself. Turns out making games is really hard. So getting the funding was a struggle, because, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this, the tough thing about when you exit like a job at, any level, but even AAA, like those games get made by big teams, and it's very hard to see who, everyone does the work. It's just the wrong word I'm looking for. The outward perception isn't that loads of people contributed to it. They think, oh no, this is the creative director. Like, obviously it was all that person.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, to you, I can list the titles I've worked on and you understand, oh, it's really cool. But to people, adjacent to games, they're just like, yeah, we can see this game's really successful, but like, I don't see director in your title or something like that. It's like, cool, yeah, but like, that's not, okay, whatever.
I get that. It's like Steve Jobs is making all the iPhones himself.
Right?
Because that's what we see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, actually. So at that point, I did realise that massive gulf between West Coast American investment into technology and, like, I'm not even going to say UK, I'm going to say European investment. A lot more Hail Marys get thrown over there. You need a lot less proof to get some money. And I'm on both sides of the coin with that. Like, I just think if you've got a lot of money to invest in stuff, you should be the one taking the risks, right? If I put $1 million into this and I've got 50 million left, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
But over here, or over there, we're more conservative, right? Like, we're just like, oh, am I going to get this money back? Like, I can show you all the proof you like, but there's still opportunity for you not to get that money back. So your caution, just instead of being here, just over here, just a little bit, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, there's that, and then the other thing as well, like, I'm not going to beat around the bush, but we had some great game ideas, but when people ask you if they're unique and what's super different about them, you're just like, well, I could list you 4 or 5 similar games, and then you move into a different argument. It's like, well, doesn't that then prove that there's a bit of a demand for it if these games are doing okay? Like, it's not, no, every genre gets 10 games and then the door's shut.
Yeah, we're done. The first 10 through.
Yeah, right? So yeah, it's very nuanced. But, so yeah, then basically I lent on the work that I could get. So I could do consulting stuff, and I used the consulting money to start pumping into the creative work, which is awesome. And then going back over my career, like I said to you before, like, I've got loads of ex-colleagues and friends who don't charge me their normal day rates because I'm not a AAA company.
Yeah.
So it's been great, right? And obviously there's reciprocal stuff. They're just like, oh, well, you can do this bit, so I'll do that for you, and you can do this bit for me. It's like, yeah, great. And we both get what we want. It's amazing. And then, so what's that led to now? Basically, we've just got loads of prototypes that we just trying to place in the market. And the landscape's a bit different now. So, if you go back 10 years, it's all like platform holders would only speak to certain types of developer, like through their existing contacts. Okay. But, they slowly opened that up over time and had people whose job it was to actually go and find the cool new stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, seeing that shift's been amazing, and just having conversations with those people now, like now that we have something tangible, is great. Like, I'm really happy. Obviously, it would have been nice to get here faster.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Yeah. So, tell me about is it your latest project, The Analyst? What's that about? And particularly because I saw you're also doing a comic book, is it like comic book companion story with it? So obviously as someone who makes manga style comics, I'm interested in that, and then also the idea of using sort of different mediums to tell the story. So yeah, tell us a bit more about that game.
Yeah, so I'll jump out a little bit before the analyst. So about me, like, I'm a great consumer of content. Like, I love film and TV, comic books, and video games. You know, there's amazing stories out there in all of these mediums. And it gets a little bit about money. So, like one weekend, I just sat down, started writing a story for a different game. And, I don't know what happened, but I just got struck by whatever the opposite of writer's block is, and just churned out like pages of this stuff. And then, so I left it alone, and then I come back like midweek and started rereading it. I was like, wow, this is a lot of content. This is too much for one game. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I started to just like logically see gaps in the story and like make cuts and think, okay, cool. And I ended up with like 5 projects. I was like, oh wow, okay. I can't get money for all of them to be games. This was too big for a game. And then I was like, I had a little bit of decision paralysis, but then I spoke to a friend of mine and, he was just like, this one could be a film. And I was just like, okay, cool. And then that kind of like opened my mind up to be like, oh, what could the others be?
Yeah.
I don't know how to make films, so that one's like on the back burner. So what rolled out of that was, 2 games, a comic book, animated movie. No, 3 games, comic book, animated movie. Yeah. And then from that, I just looked at it logically. I was like, okay, well, this game's too big, can't afford that, park it. This game's small enough, we can start making this one. This is great. And the comic book, they're cheap, right?
Yeah, definitely relatively. Well, relative. They're not cheap, but yeah, they could be cheaper.
Yeah.
No.
So that was it. So then it became like, okay, well, where can we get to fastest? How do we get this story going? So then we started focusing on the analyst, and I was like, okay, this is great. And then through the course of writing the analyst, it became clear to me that there was we had a story problem. So there's a character in the game that hates you for reasons, but there's no space in the game to put it in. Like it just wouldn't have fit.
Oh, as in the reasons they hate you.
Yeah, like
right.
There was. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, no spoilers.
It'll become apparent like in a couple of months' time. But there's no space to explain it properly. So I was like, okay, well, this is what can spit out. Like we can put this in the comic book. This would be great. So, and then we started thinking more about this. We were like, okay, great. Well, then if we keep making the game, we could use the comic book, as a companion and release that before the game. And then what that's going to do for this to plan, we start creating superfans.
Yeah, you generate that buzz.
So the goal for me is to create this universe with these 5 different projects. And if you only experience one of them, you're like, yeah, that's cool, but I could dig it. Like, if you only like games, you're only going to do those, right? If you like films, it'll be this one. But if you're a super fan and you experience all 5 of them, you're going to be like, oh, snap, that's the guy from that comic. He's like, that's awesome. That's the girl from that film. You're like, oh, that makes sense. And so whilst each thing will make sense on its own, like
they link together.
There'll be, and if you're a super fan, like it's going to be great for you.
No, definitely.
So
I like that idea.
That's a really long way of me.
No, I was just going to jump on that idea and just say that because, like, even for our comics and our manga, the different stories exist within the universe. So there's like crossover. Like one of the things that we do is we'll do a story and then we'll do like a collector's edition, and then after the main story and our universe is a television network, so all the comics are shows on the network. So after the main story in this collector's edition, we'll do like a behind the scenes in the studio. And then that's like a chance to like crossover, so you get that kind of shared universe experience through that way. So I like that idea of creating a universe and then different stories that take place within it.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't planned this out, but like, hopefully if we get there in 5 years' time, once they're all done, there'll just be more stuff for us to do, right? But we can use this character to go, maybe they're doing some other stuff, and this isn't really my favourite show, but my wife's been watching New Girl, and that's made by the same studio that also made Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Okay.
So I like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
And then just through osmosis, like I recognised Jess. I was like, okay. So they did a crossover episode where the New Girl cast were in New York. I was just like, this is awesome. Like
Cool.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
So if you're only watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine and like Jess just becomes somebody, but like if you watch both of them, you're like, oh, this is really awesome.
Yeah.
It makes sense because they're in the same city. Blah blah blah. Yeah, that's. Whilst I didn't like the show, like that's kind of like the payoff that I want to get to.
Yeah, totally get that. Yeah, cool. So yeah, no, I'm like thinking about the idea now. So I don't want to end this interview without adding another thing that you do that I did want to get to, which is you were one of the founders of an organization called POC In Play. So that's People of Color in Play, just sort of people to spell that out. And I'm sort of interested, obviously I know Adam and sort of like what you guys are doing. Can you tell me a bit, like, what is the organization? It's kind of like multiple questions in one. So like, what is the organization and what are you trying to do and what have you done so far? Maybe we can sort of step through all of those. So tell us what the organization is first.
Awesome. So POC In Play is a diversity and inclusion organisation where we are trying to increase representation of people of colour both on the screen and behind the screen. And we're doing that in multiple ways. So first of all, we got had before this virus, physical meetups, and because that was just, I'm not going to, dismiss the importance, but it's just low hanging fruit for us. We're like, listen, let's create a safe space and environment where we can all be open and honest with each other, because it pays me to say it, but it's just fact. In the UK, there's a lot of situations where there could be only one or two people of colour in a whole organisation, and whereas companies could be as inclusive as they like, but there's a ethnicity barrier that you can't get past. So, and that's not a criticism. It's just a thing. It happens in other organisations too, and other ethnicities. So let's sort that out. And then it's kind of like this support, like, oh, this is happening in my company. What should I do? Or is this normal? And then you've got shared experience, and people start to feel a bit better, a bit stronger, and then they kind of like they realise they can start to take action, right? They can either choose to leave the company, or they can articulate their feelings to HR or whoever, and hopefully improve stuff. And then for us, we're very we're adamant. We just want to make the industry better and more inclusive. So one program we're looking at is to do a masterclass on lighting ethnic characters in games, because in TV and film, they've learned how to do this, right? You can't light a white person the same as you light a black person. It just doesn't work. Yeah, I have learned that in doing these video interviews. I've learned that they're different lighting. So I might need to come to that masterclass. But I think I'm doing okay so far. But yeah, awesome. So it's just things like this, and and the key thing I want to get over is it's not about being combative. It's just like, listen, there are issues, and there's things that can be solved, and it's all about trying to help. And ignorance is a thing, like intentional or unintentional. So that's what we're just trying to combat. And then we just want to help other companies, because some companies know they have a problem and want to address the problem. They just don't know how to get there. Yeah. So they often come and speak to us, and we offer advice and help with that. What else we got? So we're working on a stock image project, because traditionally in tech, you'd be forgiven that only certain types of people use technology. Yeah. So we're just, addressing that issue too. We're just taking these little steps, one step at a time, and then hopefully cumulatively there'll be bigger impacts. And I guess at the lower level, it's all about kind of just raising awareness and raising representation. So, I'm in a weird spot, like, cause I'm old, I get asked to a lot of things, but, I realized that I wasn't being very mindful with the rest of the environment. So if I got invited to a panel or something, I wouldn't then ask who else was on the panel up front, which has led to me being on all male panels sometimes, or even, especially when we're talking about business. So business, like, we might be all indies, and like, you don't want that. Like, you want, like, I mean, AAA won't come, but like, you want like AA, triple I, stuff like that. You want, it's not just about diversity of physical presence, it's diversity of thought as well.
Yes.
Like, and that just makes the panels much better.
That's really important. You don't want everyone saying just, yeah, we all agree because we all have the same perspective. Right? You want that, but what about this? But yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no value to anyone. So, so we're just mindful of this as well. So, well, I guess I'm going to contradict myself here. This is where a little bit combative. So sometimes when organizations put up their speaker lists, you're just like, wow, like, okay, all right. And you need to try and have those discussions with them. And, I've got a friend who's on one of the boards and I love him very much. But I'm a hard friend to have sometimes because I just think, and this particular board has been the same board about the last 6 or 7 years, and that's part of the problem. Like, if you're not churning over the boards, you're not getting new ideas, you're not getting new contacts, and that's why your speaker lists always look the same. Like, the problem's you. Like, it's not you can't find the people. It's just like the people in that group don't know.
I know. That's the thing. Like, we can't find the people. Like, no, they're there. You're just not. You're just looking in the same places.
Yeah. So we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes on that as well, actually. And then the plans moving forward. Just kind of get some more investment. Just make the plans gradually bigger and bigger. At the minute, we're working on a curation program for Steam so that we can highlight creators of color on there. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years in the future, if this virus goes away, we might have a conference. Cool. We might have awards. Our imagination, there's no limit. We'll get there.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. And I definitely like what you said about sort of representation, in front or in the game and behind, like in the producing side, because I always feel, so like from my perspective, like I like what you're doing in the behind the camera, so to speak, is a good, angle because, so like for our comics, for example, like our characters are all animals, and that just means we've sort of taken out the race, thing. So it has sort of, pros and cons. It means we're not necessarily showing, sort of characters of color in the media, but I am a person of color, creating it. And it's like, you don't necessarily have to, like, if you're black, you can only make black characters and black stories. I was like, 100%. Try and break that also to show that you can just make stuff. You can just have ideas. And just make stuff. So if you want to, like, one of our characters is a monkey chef with a samurai sword, I can make that because, that's what's apparently in my head. So you just put it out. So I like that you're showing the sort of behind the scenes, as well. Yeah. So I think I'll sort of end and just say, like, where can people find out about, you, the stuff you're working on? Like social media, just, let us know.
Awesome. So you can follow my company account, which is altered_gene, on Twitter. But, if you want a mixture of business and fun and good gifts, then, you should follow me on Twitter, which is, kid_Desimo. They're the major ones, like LinkedIn. I don't do that much in Facebook. I think I only use that to speak to my arms. So,
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll let you keep that space for you and your aunt, and then just direct people to Twitter. So, thank you for talking to me. Like I said, you do a lot of stuff. It's been really good to hear that. We could have spoken for ages, but you got stuff to do. I don't know. People have got things to do watching this video. We don't want to take up everyone's time, but no, it's been good to hear about your experience and your journey and everything that you've learned along the way.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah. And then, just to sort of let people know, you can, send us your feedback, send us your comments, questions. We have a Discord that's open right now. That's going to be somewhere in the description. We have our social media. We're at mayamada on Twitter and at mayamada on Instagram. And I should also mention that we do have, so we're doing this interview as part of our GamePad Online event, and we're looking at other ways to have sort of conversations, whether it's interviews or panels, around different topics within gaming, because our thing is about sort of helping to demystify some aspects of gaming culture and industry that people who aren't already in might not necessarily know about, just have those conversations. So look out for that in the coming weeks and months and into next year. If you have liked the sound of my voice and just think to yourself you want to hear a bit more of that, we also have a podcast where myself and GamePad Online host Tazzy talk about stories across pop culture, so film, TV, video games, anime, manga. We just do deep dives into stories or interviews with creators in different spaces. So that's Story X Story. And again, we'll put those links in the description. Other than that, thank you for joining us. Like I said, it's been a pleasure to talk to Des. And thank you all for watching, and we will see you again soon. Take care, everyone.